When I head home for Christmas to my parents' place, for example, the last thing that it is snuggling by the fireside with snow outside. In Australia, it's all kind of like hot and dry all the time. So to me, it's the warm breeze in a very kind of bright sunshine and wind chimes, because my parents always had these wind chimes outside that the breeze would blow about. For me, that's kind of the nostalgic feeling of Christmas. These wind chimes, they come from a little town that's inland from where we used to live, and I decided I wanted to sample these for Christmas and sample along with it a number of other little musical making devices that I've got there from over the years. So I brought it all together into a library that's free to download and use for any Kontakt users, and it's called Mountain Chimes. Today we'll dive in, check out what it can do, introduce you to it, and show some demo tracks with it as well. Hey, my name is Steve and welcome back to Command Shift New. I'm honoured to again be taking part in the Pianobook Advent Calendar. My very first Kontakt instrument was actually released in one of these Advent calendars way back, I think in 2021, which seems like ages ago now. It's not only a few years ago, but that really set me onto a journey of creating Kontakt instruments and led me to cool collaborations and working with partners and all sorts of things. So it's great to come back to Pianobook and release something again for this Advent calendar. Let's just dive straight in. I've got a demo piece and I'm going to walk you through the instrument library first. So this is the library when you are first opening it up inside Kontakt. You can just click and drag the Mountain Chimes from Finder or from your file explorer or wherever you're dragging it from, or find it here in the files section of Kontakt that's located on your computer. And it's just one instrument that you drop in, and then you've got a number of different controls to choose and play with. A couple of things to point out is that this library, I always design my libraries to try and have as much support built into them as possible. So you'll find things like there, as you hover over controls, you'll get a message down the bottom here saying what that is actually controlling, to give you an idea of what it's going to do, a little bit more information. You can also click on this little question mark here, and inside here are a number of tutorial screens, and you can scroll through them. You can go backwards and forwards. There's about 6 or so in total, I think, and then it goes back around. And you can access these at any time, and it will remember where you're up to. So you can show and hide that as and when you need it, and it's not in the way of any controls, so you can even have it up while you are adjusting things down here. Now, what does it actually sound like, and how do you turn wind chimes into an instrument? Well, I sampled individual hits on all of the 5 wind chime bells that make up the wind chimes themselves. And I decided to repitch these, tune them up, and make them into a playable section. So the keyboard from C3 to C5 is a playable pad that you can use to play chords and melodies if you like. That would be this blue section that's down here. You can of course adjust the note envelope here, so you can adjust the attack time if you wanted to, give it a softer attack and a longer release. Of course, the faster the attack, the more of that bell-like sound you're going to have. Now, the wind chimes, of course, were not tuned to perfect notes. They were actually kind of, I think, in just intonation. They sound beautiful together, but they don't actually sound great as individual notes and then pitched out over the keyboard. So I had to do a bit of tuning, but I've also included the untuned layer as well, because I find this combined together creates this really kind of cool effect. At the moment in this Playable Keys tab, these are 3 different tabs that you can access. This is all to do with just this section here. It's really noticeable when both layers are on because the two kind of rub together a little bit. But it creates a really cool tone because it's almost like a natural chorus in a way because of the detuning effect. I've given you pan controls as well, which makes it really, really cool because you can throw these to either side and then you've got a really wide stereo pitching effect. Each one of these hits has 3 round robins as well, so you get slight variations as you go through to avoid that machine gunning effect. Now that's the playable section around here, and it isn't very huge, and that's because it just doesn't sound very good either side, I thought. Of course, you can do what you like with the samples. You have the samples there, so you can make your own pitchable instrument, but you'll notice there are a lot more keys around here, and that's because of the other things that are sampled and other types of hits as well. Down here in the very lowest section, you have all the individual bell hits. And if I go across to my hits and trems, this is really dealing with these extra sounds that are either side. So the single hits down here, currently the tuned option is on. So this is for the bells that are down here. If I give these ones a click, you can hear the sound. Those are the 5 different bells that were part of the wind chimes. And in their original tuning as well, you can then recreate the chiming sounds. You can really hear that this one, in the 4th bell, is definitely the most out of tune. The next 2 sections here are trem hits. Essentially what I did here is I just hit at different speeds. The bottom, C1 up range is slower hits, and the C2 range up are faster hits. They're not really dramatically fast tremolos, they're kind of more sporadic scatter type form, but they're designed to give you a kind of combination. And in a way, when you combine them together, you can make it sound like the original wind chimes blowing in the breeze. They are all the original tunings, so you have to be sparingly using these, I find, in compositions, because they do kind of clash, but that clash can be really beautiful as well. But you can recreate the kind of blowing in the breeze effect that wind chimes have with this. And using the mixture of the slower and faster can really help with that too. If you would prefer that you'd have like the original sample of all of them sounding together, I do have that as well. Down here, there are 2 different versions, and they're just 2 recordings of the whole wind chime playing together acoustically, so not individual notes combined. This is just them being recorded, and if I click and hold on this one, you'll hear that. Instantly when I hear that key, that is just that's just home for me in many ways, because that's kind of the sound that I would hear as the breeze was blowing through them. Now up here you have a level of the volume for all of these different hits, whether they're hits or trems, and you've got control over the single hits envelope and the tremolo hits envelope, which includes these down here as well, the trem hits. The other place that it also includes are these up here. These are different hits as well of some extra stuff. I didn't just sample wind chimes, I also sampled a healing bowl and some bells as well, and even some cymbals. So up here I've sampled some bell hits. Essentially one is a felt beater, and one is the wooden beater that comes with the bowl. And then up here are some tremolo hits. And then on this one here is a droning sound. With a healing bowl, you can often run the beater around the edge to get this kind of continuous resonant sound. So I decided to sample that as well, and I sampled it using the wooden mallet that comes with it, and you can get this really grainy, graspy kind of texture with it that I thought was quite interesting. Now with all those bell hits, we do have down here some key pitch changing. Essentially, if we decide that we want a different note to this, which at the moment is just set to C, then I could say pick the G down the bottom here and it will change the bell tone. As opposed to C, or we can go all the way up to the G at the top, and that will work across most of the bowl sounds as well. Up the top here we have a couple of different types of cymbals. That second hit there has always kind of been an interesting pair of cymbals for me. I think the 2 of them are just slightly different pitches and they really rub together, which is kind of painful sometimes, but it depends on what you're looking for. It might be the perfect thing. And at the top here, the last 3 keys are all of the bell sounds. And these come from bells that have been stitched together or kind of like tied together in a rope. I kind of just jangled them in front of the microphone. So all of these sounds combine together into a very kind of textural library, and while there's ability to play pads and melodies, there's also a big focus on textures that you can add into any tracks. No library I make wouldn't be complete without effects though, so let's jump to the final tab. Before I do, I'm just going to turn my untuned layer off and bring that back to center-ish there, and then over here on the master effects, we've got the tape, chorus, delay, and reverb. Now, just using the center keys here, the C3 to C5 keys, to play other chords. I'll then take a look at the different effects. So first of all, over here we've got tape, and we've got tape saturation and age. The saturation can get very gnarly very quickly. Almost guitar-like distortion at that point. And then the age is like a combination of flutter and wow. So between these two controls, you can get a very kind of degraded-like sound. So it's something really cool to sort of experiment with, and it might be the perfect thing to add that kind of like lo-fi sound to the bells, but in general, just a sort of interesting flavor to add. Of course, with all the effects, you can always throw your own effects on after the library. You don't have to use these effects. So if you've got different ones that you want to use, by all means, throw them on. The chorus there, a pretty standard inclusion of most pad-like sounds that I do. I always like to add this one in to give us a chorusy feel. That can obviously add to the atmosphere quite well, and then the delay as well, it brings another kind of spacious element to it. And the all-important reverb, which is actually a diffused delay, but it just sounds so beautiful as a kind of wash over everything. Now there's a number of ways to use this instrument, and I'm going to quickly dive in and show you a demo track that I made using some of these sounds. So this piece here is basically a kind of lamenting track. It's a little bit sad, but these chimes and bell sounds really add to the atmosphere of the track and help kind of flesh out the pad-like sound. Initially, there is a solo cello type sound or a bowed cello sound. This is then being combined with some heirloom strings, just to flesh out the kind of harmonic structure of the track. On top of that is another Evolution series instrument, the bass diju, which is a beautiful sort of flute from China, and it just perfectly complements the kind of woody textures with this airiness over the top in the higher registers. However, then we really combine a lot of different textures. I'm using my Mountain Chimes library as a pad, and that really helps flesh out the harmonic structure again. I'm then including these little bell-like sounds that include kind of like a ringing out sound. And you can hear that that's kind of using some of the delay and the reverb effects that are available built into the instrument to give it that kind of chiming-like texture coming from over the mountains. I include some bell textures as well. The cymbals also make an appearance. And right at the end, some trem hits to give those wind chime type sounds. Again, using those effects built in. All of this together creates a really brilliant texture. So really, this library in this particular case has been used to fill out and pad the texture and the atmosphere of this track. If you want to check out the full track, of course you can. It's linked in my SoundCloud below, but this is a really cool example of using this library as a more textural element, but I'm keen to see how you'll use this library, whether you'll use these bell-like textures in a more melodic or harmonic way, or whether you'll use those kind of interesting sounds like those bell chimes and that sort of stuff in a more textural way like I have here. So head over to Pianobook, check it out and download it and let me know. I'd love you to kind of tag me or send me examples of what you do with this library as well. And of course, any track you create, you could always throw up onto Pianobook's SoundCloud playlist for the library so that others can kind of check it out and hear what you're doing with this library. I really enjoyed making it and sharing a little bit of what my Christmas sort of time is like with all of you. On your way out, of course, don't forget to hit the like button and the subscribe button if you're not already. We'd love to have you on board. I do a lot of videos for Kontakt, scripting and building of libraries, but also music production tutorials as well and all sorts of things in between. Feel free to join in if you'd like. Otherwise though, I will catch you in the next one.